Hey, so a young lady asked me for my thoughts on the importance of black women being very protective about our bloodlines. And I think this is such a great topic. So, the thing I think of when I think of bloodlines is legacy, the importance of establishing a legacy, right? And when I think of legacy, that's what you leave behind. The work you do in your life will define you when you're no longer here. So, for example, the way I think about it for myself, when I die, what what impression will I leave on people? And what will I leave them with that will be useful to them when I'm not here? Now, one tangible part of legacy is wealth building. Now, everyone isn't going to be a millionaire. But when you die, what are you going to leave your children? Or if you don't have children, what will you leave for the other people in your family? Will you be a financial burden to them in your death? Will you leave them with a bunch of bills? Will you leave them with a funeral to pay for? Or will you leave them in a situation where you leave them with a little something? If you have children, do you have a home that you'll be able to leave them with? Something that they can use as a base to establish themselves with. Perhaps you'll leave them with some insurance. Something that they can take and build on, Another thing that I think of when I think of bloodlines is the fact that certain things can be passed through the bloodlines on a spiritual and an emotional level. I think that generational curses can come through the bloodline. If you leave your children or your family a legacy of emotional and psychological brokenness, then guess what? They're going to repeat those patterns. If you're emotionally and psychologically broken, and you are partnered with someone who is emotionally and psychologically broken, and then the two of you don't address your issues, don't do the work that you need to do, and then you have children, guess what? You leave all of that mess behind for your children to try to clean up. And so this is where it can be very important to be selective about your romantic partners. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't give a man a chance just because he comes from a broken family? No. But if he comes from a broken family and he hasn't done anything to address how that has affected him, that's a guy you might want to stay away from. Because there are some men, if they never have seen an example of a solid family structure, they might be able to get married and have children and be the best husband and father. But if they haven't dealt with their emotional and psychological damage, then they could repeat the same patterns that they saw growing up. I know in my own family, a huge problem that we have is that one of my grandfathers, when his first wife, my grandmother, passed away at a young age, he remarried and had a second family, but he never did what was necessary to make sure that his first set of children and his second set of children got along. So you're talking about nearly 30 years of them just going back and forth. Well, now he's dead. His second wife is dead. And we're all here, as the children and grandchildren and now great-grandchildren at this point, trying to figure out how to be a family and how to be close to each other, because we were left with a legacy and a bloodline full of brokenness and hurt. I mean, I'm telling y'all, it was so bad that at my grandfather's funeral, because, we get to the funeral and we look at the program, and they had left out my grandfather's first set of children and grandchildren. We were completely left out of the obituary. Well, now everyone's trying to get along, but that hurts. That hurts to just be written out of your grandfather's life like you didn't matter. But we're coming to realize that, wait a minute, we're fighting a dead man and a dead woman's battle. The two people, my grandfather and his second wife, the two people that were responsible for this brokenness are not here. But yet they had children, grandchildren, and then the great-grandchildren from my grandfather's first wife, my grandmother. You have these generations of people who are left behind trying to figure all this out. And guess what? In the mix, because we saw the brokenness, unfortunately, some of my family members repeated that because it's what they saw. They didn't do the work that was necessary to heal from that damage. So they repeated the patterns and are now trying to self-correct. So when I think of bloodlines and legacy and Black women, it's so important for us to make sure that we're not continuing cycles of abuse and other forms of damage. And it's crazy because even like if you're a Black person and say your immediate family, like your immediate household was stable, there's so much dysfunction around you in your own family, or you could meet a man and fall in love with him and find out he grew up in dysfunction. And so I do feel like if you are a Black woman who is emotionally and psychologically stable, and you've done the work to address any hurt that you've dealt with in the past, do not make it your mission to try to fix a man who is emotionally or psychologically broken. Don't do it. If you're healed and you're a stable woman, make sure that you only deal with men who are stable and emotionally healed. And I think that's a great way to protect your bloodline and to make sure that you're establishing a legacy for your family. All right, so I hope I did this topic some justice for the young lady who asked me this question. And if I have any additional thoughts, because I'm sure I will, but if I have any additional thoughts, I will do a future upload. All right, have a good one.